I told my mom that I was a girl born in a boy's body. That's a girl thing. That's weird. Why are you liking that? That's only for girls. The trans kids, every time I see those videos, I'm like, that's me. But what I could never have been mentally prepared for was being sexually harassed by otherwise like straight men, obsessively interested in me, sending me unsolicited nudes. I was stalked. I had a guy in my apartment building standing outside my apartment door in his underwear, sliding pictures of his penis underneath my door.
Oh my gosh, wow.
But absolutely a weekly basis, I get some crazy person after me. Feminine men are at the bottom of the totem pole. There's all these other cultures that have third genders. And I'm like, yeah, it's illegal to be gay and all of them. I think if I was just a little bit lonelier, I can very easily understand how a lot of these feminine gay boys make the decision to transition.
Pear Joseph, welcome to my podcast. And it is great to see you, see your face, hear your voice, because we've been chatting for a few months. And I believe this is your first podcast appearance, right?
It is, yeah. Thank you for having me.
No worries. So, why do you speak out on trans activism?
Because what I see happening with specifically the hsts type of trans, I feel very much would have been me. When I was 6 years old, I told my mom that I was a girl born in a boy's body. Of course, like all of the rest of the trans kids, completely just based on stereotypes. I liked playing with dolls. I wanted to wear dresses. I liked the color pink. Just typical, stereotypical girl things. And everyone in my life told me, you shouldn't play with that. That's a girl toy. You shouldn't wear that. That's girl clothes. And so in my innocent mind as a child, I thought, well, then I must be a girl then. And my mom took me to therapy to talk to a therapist about that. And very thankfully, I was not affirmed as kids are today, basically right off the bat. We pretty quickly got over it and went through the rest of my life being a proudly and happily gender nonconforming man. But I think there's a lot of kids who are not being given that opportunity. They're being told that if you are gender nonconforming, there's something wrong with you that needs to be fixed via medicalization and surgery. So that's what really got me involved in all this gender ideology madness. Just because I truly believe that if I had been born just a little bit later, I 100% would have been transitioned, or at the very least, calling myself non-binary or one of the other ridiculous gender identities.
What year were you born, if you don't mind me asking? I think maybe we're around. Oh, me too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's the same time zone.
Yeah. So it's so funny because in the 90s and late 90s, early 2000s, I feel like people were less sexist than they are now. I mean, of course, it's harder as a boy, a feminine boy, I think, than tomboys. I knew a million tomboys, girls who were kind of masculine my whole childhood. They were never told that they were born in the wrong body, but feminine boys in particular, it's kind of like, oh God, why is he wearing dresses? Like, we got to figure this out. It's kind of a crisis. And like I said, I was in therapy pretty early. But anyways, that seeing the trans kids, like every few months, it seems there would be a new viral trans kid on the internet. And Edie, I think, is one. That family I think you've covered on your channel. There was, of
Yeah.
course, Jazz
The Saucony
Jennings.
Jolies, is it?
Yes. Ugh.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel
And
so
every
bad for
time
that boy.
seriously, it makes me sick to my stomach because every time I see those videos, I'm like, that's me. It's literally
Hmm.
like watching me as a little boy. I mean, I was 2 years old, reaching for dresses, wanting to wear dresses, wanting to play with dolls. There's nothing about these trans kids that's any different from me or a lot of gay men. It's for so many years, it's been a very common story with gay men that they're like, oh, yeah, everyone knew when I came out because I was wanting to play with girls as a child. I was wanting to play with dolls. So, like, it was no surprise when I came out as gay. This is totally normal for gay men, especially
Mm.
effeminate gay men.
Hmm.
And as, this gender ideology and trans craze started happening like 10 years ago, and I started seeing all these viral videos of these kids, I'm like listening to the parents and waiting for them to say something that would make me believe that for sure their child is trans as opposed to just most likely going to be gay. And they never say anything. It's just he likes to play with dolls, she likes to play sports. It's 100% based on stereotypes. And
Hmm.
I truly feel, as dramatic as it might sound, that my life would have been 100% ruined if I had been affirmed. I
Mm.
meet every single criteria for the hsts type of trans. It's if you read about the hsts type, it's just an exact
Could
description,
you explain that just for our audience if they haven't heard it?
right? So there's basically two main types. I mean, recently we're seeing more the like autistic kind of incel boys and lots of different types recently, but historically there was autogynephiles, which is typically straight or bisexual men who are sexually turned on by the thought of being a woman or becoming a woman or wearing
Hmm.
women's clothes. And then the HSTS type is the gay type, basically. They're attracted to the same biological sex. They are from birth, right off the bat, very gender nonconforming. They're the types that, like me, were, as soon as they could talk, it was very obvious that they were more interested in quote unquote opposite sex toys and things like that.
Hmm.
They're the HSTS trans woman, or, male to female, they're pretty much always attracted to masculine men, straight men, which for a lot of them is a big part of why they transition is to have that romantic or sexual opportunity.
Yeah.
And I think, like a lot of people throughout my life, I mean, like I said, I got over thinking I was a girl pretty quickly as a kid. I don't even know how long I was in therapy for, less than a year. And then I never really thought about it much after that, like being trans. I knew a couple trans people here and there, but
Hmm.
like most of us, it wasn't this cultural craze. So I just didn't think about it much. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, there's people who think they're born in the wrong body. That's fine. Doesn't affect me. But again, I think like most people, I thought that all trans people were the HSTS type because that's usually the type you would see on the news.
In films and
Right,
yeah, in the media. I think it's really insidious the way they do that because actually, as a percentage, it's been far more heavily weighted towards the autogynephiles and a lot of the males who are first being transitioned, in 60s, 70s, 80s, were those men who just out of nowhere kind of sought a doctor when they were 40, 50 years old saying,
right.
please do this.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, I think that's an interesting point, and also the creation of the trans child really came from a lot of those men who are
yeah,
not naturally feminine, who
right,
were unhappy with the outcome. So
right.
then, because transition didn't work for them, then the answer was, oh well, we just do it to kids, which also doesn't make any sense.
Evil.
Um, but I think I think the homosexual, transsexual, HSTS that we're talking about here is quite a fascinating topic. And I focused a lot on AGP and autogynephiles on my channel. And, I will continue to talk about it sometimes, but I feel like I've interviewed so many people and talked about it so much that I'm not sure how much more I can learn about it at the moment.
Right.
And it's clearer, I think, when someone doesn't know about trans, they assume everyone is like, like you, if you were trans, for
Right.
example, or like Blair White or something like that.
Right.
Um, when they learn about trans, it kind of really shifts towards the autogynephiles. I feel like the gay boys get a bit forgotten, and I think people kind of just a lot of women potentially now. The rad femmes will come at me in the comments for this, but I think they see them as less threatening than the autogynephiles because they're not attracted to women. So there's
Yeah.
and also for the vast majority of trans women doing horrible things like assaulting women, beating women in sports, they're all attracted to women. So I don't feel
Right.
like, there's that much focus on the gay men. But it's a fascinating topic because I think transition is not an ideal outcome for anyone, really. Obviously, if there's a way you can live your life authentically and be happy, that's what we would want you to be able to do. And I think people just sort of see the gay type as, oh, but, I'm a libertarian, you should do what you want. And in one way, I agree with that. But then on the other, we're not tackling the societal causes that are
Right.
luring men towards this option. And I think there's quite a few things that are kind of pushing them in that direction. And one
Yeah.
of them with the, like you've described, young boy, very gender non-conforming from a young age, usually kind of spontaneously says, I'm a girl. And this is a known thing. Like this predates trans. I'm sure you've come across the studies by Zucker, I think, where or other there's this book, The Sissy Boy Syndrome, I think, where they tracked these boys and they didn't transition them, and the vast majority of them just realized they were gay and became
Yeah.
comfortable like yourself. But I think one of the driving forces towards them concluding they must be a girl is society rejecting their femininity and saying you can't be like that, saying being bullied, in some cases abused. How much do you feel that was a factor for you? I mean, did you experience a lot of homophobia in that sense from family or friends? And do you think that was part of you concluding, oh, well, I must not be a boy then? Subscribe to my Substack, Jack Jewell Uncut. This is where you will get my full, uncut, untamed, and unashamed takes too controversial for YouTube, including early access to all videos, a private members chat where you can talk to me, and bonus footage seen nowhere else, including this episode. How do you feel about Trump's election, and how do you feel about the current climate?
The rules specify that when we have a gender non-binary candidate or officer, the non-binary individual is counted as neither male nor female, and the remaining 6 offices must be gender balanced.
Link on screen and in the description.
Yeah. I mean, early on in my life, like I said, everyone was telling me that's a girl thing. That's weird. Why are you liking that? That's only for girls. So that was definitely, I mean, where the idea first came from in my head that I must be a girl, because if that's a girl thing and I like that, then 1 + 1 = 2. But later on in my life, I mean, I'm kind of a weird example because I'm very, very introverted. I don't really care that much about having a community or a big group of friends. So like in high school and middle school, had I very much avoided bullying because people tried to bully me. I never really went through a phase of being in the closet. I was never in the closet. As soon as I
Mm,
went through puberty, I was just out. Like I didn't have any internalized homophobia. I
yeah.
mean, people, like I said, people tried to bully me. They would be like, "Ooh, I heard you like boys." And I'd just straight up say, "Yeah, I do. Is there a problem?" And they would kind of be like thrown off by that. Like, "Oh, hey, no, that's cool, man. Like, you do you." But there was other
Yeah.
gay men in my high school who were actually much more outwardly flamboyantly gay. And those same people
Mm,
would say like, "Oh, I heard you're gay." And they'd go, "No, I'm not. Like, don't say that." And the bullies would love that, you know? It's you can't really bully someone for something they're confident about or secure about. They like
very
to,
true.
get the person who's insecure.
Yep.
So luckily I didn't deal with too much homophobia. I mean, people tried, but they quickly realized I just didn't care about being accepted by them. So I thankfully avoided a lot of homophobia. The
Mm-hmm.
gender nonconforming stuff was more of the issue.
Mm,
When I was 18 or 19, I started wearing a lot of makeup. I mean, I've always thought androgynous people were really beautiful. I loved like Grace Jones and Pete Burns and even just random high fashion models who had kind of edgy androgynous looks. And I thought I wanted to kind of look like that. So I started experimenting with makeup. Very embarrassing. Those pictures have been erased, but I would wear like full makeup, like eyeshadow, lipstick, the whole thing, and just walk
mhm.
around my town like that. And of course, that got a lot of comments. But I don't know. The whole like homophobia thing, I've always been really okay with having just a few close friends. I don't really care that much about being accepted by the general population.
Mm,
Um, what when things got really weird for me was when I turned like 22, 21, 22. I kind of made an effort to look even more androgynous. I grew my hair out. I had had like a normal kind of boy haircut before that. I got lip fillers and like shaped my eyebrows differently. Um, and it was never with the thought of changing genders or having a new gender identity. It was just a look. I just thought that looked beautiful.
yeah.
Like I always thought androgynous people were cool. um, so I
It's
made a
refreshing just to hear someone put it so simply, you know?
yeah,
Whereas there are some people who do that, but it comes with this whole ideology and belief system and like
right,
politics. But like, really, it doesn't have to be that deep, you know?
right, yeah. I mean, I'm a true believer that men can be whatever they want, women can be whatever they want. There's no one correct way. Um, I, of course, would not recommend surgery or even lip fillers or anything like that. But for me, it's just what I always thought was beautiful since I was young. And so I decided to go with it. But what I could never have been mentally prepared for was this complete change in my life of being sexually harassed by otherwise like straight men on
Mm,
almost a daily basis. I went from no interest from anyone because gay men aren't interested in feminine men and I was wearing makeup and stuff. And I mean, practically overnight, I was followed on the street, guys pulling up in cars next to me when I'm walking down the sidewalk, thinking that I'm a prostitute because I think they think I'm a trans woman and they think all trans women are sex workers, I guess. I don't know.
yeah.
Almost every
Well,
job I
is it,
had,
and
like,
is this in did you grow up in a conservative state or what kind of state did you
sorry,
grow up?
I grew up in Massachusetts, which is
Oh,
very
right.
liberal.
Liberal. Hmm.
And then when I was 21, I moved to Los Angeles, which is where I am now. And it was
Okay.
when I moved to Los Angeles that I started really changing my look more.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, and I mean, like when I first moved here, I kind of jumped around to different jobs a lot, trying to find, somewhere to stay for a while. Every single job I had, there would be one or two straight men obsessively interested in me. Um, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce the word because I'll butcher it, but it's GAMP, GAMP,
Mm.
is the
It's
term
called
for.
So for any audio listeners, Pear was saying straight with quotations.
Right.
Sometimes I forget that, and then people are listening on the audio. I'm like, oh, they actually think we're saying that. But
Right.
yeah, so you just referred to GAMP, which is, I think, gynandromorphophilia. Yeah, so maybe you can explain what that is.
Yeah, so it's basically, again, in quotes, straight men who are attracted to trans women or she males or whatever you want to call it. I, of course, always knew that was a thing. Like, I knew that it was in porn, that was kind of like a specific fetish. I had no clue the extent of it. I mean, I didn't even look like a trans woman. I wasn't cross-dressing. I wasn't wearing dresses. I wasn't wearing high heels. I dress in men's clothes or pretty neutral clothes. I didn't have breasts. Like, I changed two things, my hair and my lips. And it was like crazy. I had random guys I went to high school with who had, like, we followed each other on social media, but had never even spoken before, sending me unsolicited nudes, obsessively in my DMs. I was stalked. I had a guy in my apartment building standing outside my apartment door in his underwear, sliding pictures of his penis underneath my door.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
I mean, I could go on and on. I was like trapped in an ATM, like after hours in a bank. You know, you can go inside just to use the ATM. A guy blocked me off and was trying to get me to go in his car with him. And these are all like very masculine men. These aren't gay men in the sense that people would typically think. They're deep voice, completely manly and masculine. Most of them have wives and girlfriends. And I was just like, when I decided to kind of change my look, what I was mentally preparing for was explaining to people I'm not a trans woman, or maybe dealing with some homophobia and annoying stuff. I could never have imagined the interest I would suddenly get from a very different type of man.
Cohort.
This was like 2016, 2017, so the trans social contagion was just getting started. And so I still hadn't really researched the whole trans thing, the hsts, the autogynephile, all that stuff. So I kind of like didn't know what was happening. Like, I didn't understand why I was getting all this attraction. And I'm very much into monogamy and relationships. I don't do hookups. I'm not into the whole gay app culture.
Open relationship.
No.
That's one way where, like, I don't meet many gay men in London who are not in open relationships, but yeah,
it's probably worse than Los Angeles. It's crazy.
Yeah, but for me, I've just always been happy, you know, having that one person if I'm in a relationship. So yeah.
But for a different hsts type or a gender nonconforming boy, I think maybe they would have liked that attention, because typically the hsts type is specifically attracted to straight men or very masculine men. For me, it was terrifying, because I'm like, they were very clearly not interested in dating. They're interested in a fetish. They just want sex. And it was really, I was in a lot of really scary situations all the time. And
wow, I'm so sorry.
It's okay. Thank you. It still happens on not a daily basis, but absolutely a weekly basis. I get some crazy person after me, because I think they think that I'm a trans woman, which is ridiculous. B, they think trans women, they know they're biologically men, so they think we have the same sex drive, so this person isn't going to be bothered by me being after them sexually. Like, they're almost confused when I turn them down. And they also think that all trans women are sex workers, which has some truth to it, because historically that was a lot of what they had to do up until just recently.
But
So
also, I just wonder on that point, because I was thinking about this just today, this whole kind of, you know, men who identify as women and transition. The narrative is that they've had to do sex work to survive, and maybe that's been the case in some cases, but I honestly wonder if a lot of them do sex work in porn because they're men and because they have
Well,
that sexual ability and proclivity.
right. That's a good
I
point.
really do wonder that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're probably partially right. Yeah, there's an element to it. I mean, transitioning is expensive, and I think a lot of
Mm,
them think it's the easiest way to make money if they want surgeries. But you're right too. I mean, you don't see nearly as many trans men getting involved in sex work. It's specifically the male to female. So I'm sure the male sex drive has a lot to do with it too. I mean, you see all the time online, how many trans women do you come across online, and their pictures are all like nude or in lingerie or promoting OnlyFans.
yeah. Yeah, because it's not
Um,
even if their sex drive is diminished from estrogen or whatever, the male brain just responds to stimuli and sex differently, like on average, than the female brain. Like, it's easier for us to get turned on visually, for example.
yeah.
So I feel like maybe they can make the decisions more recklessly, but obviously lots of women get into it too. So yeah, sorry to derail that, but I think it's an interesting point.
No, that's okay. Um, but yeah, anyway, so once I kind of realized how many masculine, straight passing men are into trans women, and then as the gender ideology and trans craze went on, I really researched it heavily. It
Mm,
really made me connect the dots and realize, like, again, in a lot of ways, I've gotten so lucky, just my personality type, not being affirmed when I was. I think if I was just a little bit lonelier, a little bit more desperate for romance or sex, even, I can very easily understand how a lot of these feminine gay boys make the decision to transition, because feminine men are at the bottom of the totem pole. Gay men don't want them. Obviously, straight men don't want them. Obviously, girls don't want them. In the gay scene, like, the more masculine you are, the more desirable you are. Even today, I mean, every feminine gay man I know is trying to call himself something other than a feminine gay man, non binary, agender, gender fluid. It's like
yeah.
nobody wants to be one, nobody wants to be with one. And so I can definitely see how a really effeminate gay boy would come to the conclusion that he should transition if he wants to be with the type of men he wants to be with, especially if they're like with me in the DMs, or like he tries on makeup and then all of a sudden he's getting all this attention, or he does
Mm,
drag for the first time and all of a sudden he's getting all this attention and being told by girls, oh, you're beautiful, you're glamorous, you're amazing, or he's being told by men that he's sexy. Then it's like, oh, maybe this is the answer. Maybe this is how I'll not be alone forever, or how I'll
yeah,
just be seen as desirable.
especially if he's been bullied, abused, and isolated and lonely his whole
Yeah,
life.
yes. Um, it's, like I said, a huge thing with men, the GAMP type, but also
Hmm.
I think you tweeted, actually, I might be confusing you with someone else, but you talked about a lot of the RuPaul's Drag Race contestants who have come out as trans. And I've
Yeah,
thought about that a lot recently, and I just think, like, so many of them are probably like me, didn't get much attention at all as boys, but then they put the wig on and the nails and the makeup and the boobs, and all of a sudden everyone is telling them, you're gorgeous, you're amazing. They get career opportunities. Men are all of a sudden interested in them. And it's like, I really think that's a big part of their decision to transition. I don't think a lot of them, if they had been seen as desirable just as they are as feminine gay men, I don't think a lot of them would have transitioned.
yeah. Yeah, I kind of said it's almost like a new cohort because I don't believe the ones who've been doing drag for a decade and were in RuPaul, I don't believe that they have gender dysphoria. I mean, maybe
Right.
they struggle in some ways. I mean, most of them take a load of drugs and everything, so who knows how they feel day to day. But it's very clear that what once used to drive transition was more, my life, I just cannot cope with this anymore. Like, it makes more sense for me to do this. So I have a lot of sympathy for that and empathy for that. When Blair White tells Blair's story, I have so much empathy for it because it's just like
Yeah.
filled with abuse, bullying, loneliness. And I'd love to get onto that in a little bit, but I think with the RuPaul people, theirs is far more just about the benefits and
Yes.
if you think about it, they already are wearing women's clothes. They're great at makeup, hair, they're in that like 50% of the time. They already have, filler,
Yeah.
lips, other facial work done. It's almost like for them it just makes more sense. And then, having, if they do get breast implants, then that's just a bonus for their costumes.
Yeah.
Plus, I think I have a little clip here in relation to what you're talking about with these men that you're
Uh,
describing. And I'd like your I didn't mean to come to it so soon, but it's just very relevant to what you're saying. And I just think this is so key in understanding this hsts phenomenon, and it's not something I think enough people are focusing on.
I don't see myself as gay, straight, bi, or anything. I see myself as fluid and generally just attracted to femininity. So that is mostly women, though a lot of them in the West actually seem to think that they're blokes now. But sometimes that could be men as well if they're very effeminate. I find myself more attracted to a ladyboy and a very camp, effeminate man than I would a masculine woman, right? So that's just where I stand with it. Maybe this influences the way that I see it.
yeah. Love that he could admit that. That's the thing. Even with a lot of these couples like Blair or Eden the doll who are in relationships with quote unquote straight men, I'm actually really happy for them because a lot of trans women will just be fetishized and never have a real relationship. And like I said, I see myself in people like Blair. We're basically the same type of person. So whenever I see a trans woman like that actually having a healthy or mostly healthy as far as I know relationship, it makes me really happy. But a lot of these men are just like, I have even experienced going on dates or just texting with guys, and right off the bat, they're like, you should get breast implants. And I'm like, I'm not trans. And they're like, I'll pay for it. I've literally lost count of how many men have told me they'll pay for my surgery for me. And of course, I very quickly move on and stop talking to them. But what's
Do you
crazy
do
is,
you think do you think that's because, because one of these points is a lot of people talk about the suffering, a feminine gay man like yourself might experience being rejected from the world, therefore concluding, and then sometimes that rejection gets focused on the body, right? So going through puberty is really stressful, and they start to reject their male anatomy. That's a tangent that I just brought up there, but I am interested to know, did that ever happen for you? Like, did body hair or, your maleness, bone structure and stuff like that, did that cause you distress?
um, no.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, because I
yeah,
feel like, sorry, go on.
I was gonna say, no, I never had issues with my body. I kind of have like a woo woo hippie way of thinking about my body, to be honest. Like, I know it's kind of corny, and a lot of people say this, like, we're all just skin suits and our soul is what matters. And it's corny, but I also really feel that way. Like, I just don't really care about my body. Like, I feel like my thoughts and my opinions and my passions, that's who I am. And the outer packaging, I don't feel a
Yeah.
connection or a disconnection with it. It's irrelevant to me. And I've always felt that
Mm.
way. I never had an issue with my genitals or anything like that. Um,
Yeah, because I feel like what happens to them is it doesn't start that way. Like no child just automatically detests a part of their body, but it's almost like they internalize this rejection of their maleness that they experience because, you know, the world says you can't be male and be yourself. So then,
Right.
you know, it's almost like someone with anorexia, if she did not grow up in a social environment with girls comparing themselves, and you know, then she wouldn't perhaps become obsessed with her weight. So I see it
Yeah.
as quite a similar thing. And so we often talk about that drive towards transition is like the suffering from being gay and then the rejection of the maleness. But then the other side is not talked about enough. And I see them coming together, you know, in this recipe. And that is these men we're talking about. And, you know, you saying that they would offer to pay for a surgery, which is crazy. Do you feel like that is more, you know, if they're attracted to feminine, very feminine men, I guess the trans woman is like the ultimate achievement of that because it, you know, they come with breasts and they have kind of the body fat distribution and yada yada yada. So I wonder, is it just because they want to achieve this like ultimate version of their fantasy, or is it because the majority of them cannot admit that they're actually bisexual on some level, and they need men to be women in order to, you know, be public about it or even accept it themselves?
In my experience, it's more the second. There's definitely some who are specifically attracted to trans women,
Mm-hmm.
but like I'm not exaggerating when I say I've lost count of how many times this has happened where I was trying to date guys and this conversation happened. For me, 95% of them were attracted to me as I am. They didn't have an issue with my body. They
Yeah.
wanted me to have breasts, which is insane because I look like a man with long hair. I would look completely insane with breasts. But they just think it's less embarrassing to be with a special type of woman as opposed to a special type of man. They,
Yeah.
which it doesn't even make any sense because some of these men I actually know, like I had guys from my high school all of a sudden interested in me. And I know their family, and I know that their family is not homophobic, and I know their family probably wouldn't even care if they dated a trans woman, to be honest. They're like very liberal. But it's just this weird, like I said earlier, feminine men are so ashamed of being feminine men, and masculine men are so ashamed of being with feminine men. They're
Yeah.
like, but maybe if you could just get the surgery, and then we could be like a normal couple, quote unquote. So they're,
Mm,
in my experience, it's very much, it's not that they're even that they need the breasts. It's that they think everyone else around them will be nicer to them or accept the relationship more if they're with a unique type of woman as opposed to a unique type of man. And
yeah.
yeah, it's just sad and it's ridiculous because a
And
lot of these men, like, of course, I have sympathy for people who are from really conservative religious families where they'll literally get disowned if they're
mm,
in a gay relationship. But a lot of these people are not. They're from liberal families, but it's just that I don't know where it comes from. They're so concerned with not seeming masculine, or I don't even know.
yeah. And I
It's
mean,
just,
that is just so key to understand what's going on with this phenomenon, because this whole narrative of, you know, gay acceptance, you know, we've been there, done that, our lives are good now. I mean, it's definitely not true in terms of as soon as we started to progress, society was like, well, you know, if we cannot reject their sexuality, let's make them the other sex.
right.
So that's a massive problem. But also, I think we look at gay men in such a kind of reductive way. In people might sort of imagine someone a little bit more like me, even though I don't see myself as outrageously camp. But you know, for viewers and listeners, you and I are both gay men, but you know, we're so different in terms of I don't see a campness in you. You're not camp or flamboyant, in my opinion. You have like a
Yeah.
soft, natural femininity that is of that more of a kind of stereotypical female or something like that. Like it's a lot, to me, you feel like a lot more nurturing and kind of soft and um, like that for me. Whereas the kind of stereotypical gay man is like, yes, queen, sassy, camp. Um, and that's an issue because I think society still views us as this in this kind of box, in this homogenous group, which is why it's so annoying when someone says, oh, you can't be gay and have this political viewpoint, because you're literally just reducing us down into just a stereotype. But, you know, we kind of fought to gain visibility of gay men. But then those men you're describing, and we're talking about these closeted bisexual men or men that are into very feminine men, you know, they've never had their kind of civil rights movement and, you know, this
Yeah.
is us, you know, you need to accept us. And I just wonder, like, how common do you think it is for men to have this sort of propensity? Because people will sort of describe it, they'll straw man it on Twitter. And that really annoys me because while one of these men with another feminine man, while that is a homosexual relationship, to describe their sexuality as gay in the classic sense of like me, for example, it just doesn't really quite work. It's a
Yeah.
very specific kind of, you know, proclivity to be attracted to women and then men who are very feminine, but not the kind of camp gay. So while I agree it is homosexual, like the experience, but like we see, you know, I don't know if you've there's been loads of them kind of viral videos of some, you know, macho muscular guy. I think there was one guy who was dating a trans woman, quote unquote, and he was saying, "Yeah, I'm not gay, I'm straight," and then he was talking about like sucking her dick, and I'm like,
Right.
that makes zero sense. So do you think there are far more men who actually have this within them than we think?
I know for a fact there are. I mean, I
Yeah.
I I feel like hesitant to even talk about this because I don't want to sound like I get so many men interested in me. I
Oh, don't
cannot
worry. We know you
I
do.
cannot I cannot believe how many straight passing men I have, since changing my look, I have found out are into this. And I'm not even a trans woman. I'm sure actual trans women who have breasts and the whole deal, I'm sure they get 10 times more than I do. Um,
Mm, yeah.
where was I
And
going to go?
when they're hitting you up, are they always wanting to keep things on the DL? Are they kind of discreet type?
Yeah, always. I mean, it's from when I was 21 till 26, I met my now ex, but the guy I was with for several years. Um, it was like constant, like right off the bat, I would realize that they were just interested in a quick hookup, and I'd be like, okay, forget it. Just so many. It was very obvious right off the bat that they would never want to be seen in public with me. The few that were willing to be seen in public with me, it was the ones who wanted me to get surgery first. Um, so crazy, yeah. But yeah, I agree with you though. I see this a lot on social media. People who are like, they'll see those couples, like a man and a trans woman, and they're like, he's gay. If you have sex with a biological man, you're gay, and that's it. And I actually don't really agree because they're just kind of oversimplifying it. A lot of people think if there's two penises involved, it's gay, period. But like I mean, you would never be attracted to a trans woman with breasts, and gay men are not interested in
No.
trans women. It's a
No.
it's a very specific other type of man
Yeah.
that is interested in trans women. It's almost like its own sexuality, kind of.
Yeah. I mean, so how I describe it is when they're together, scientifically, it's a homosexual experience, right? Because it's two men. But socially and psychologically, it is a variant of bisexuality, I would say,
Yeah,
because a lot of them are also attracted to women. Some of them are like attracted to women, but lean way more towards the trans woman. And I guess
yeah,
some of them try to have the best of both worlds because they do hookups with trans women, but then ultimately, if they want kids, then they have the option of still being with a woman. So, and rather than settling down with a trans woman, quote unquote.
Right. Yes, definitely. So many of the guys who have hit me up are in relationships with women, and they're trying to do this fetishy experiment on the side. But yeah, I mean, people are oversimplifying it and just saying they're gay. If you're in a bar or in a club and you see a person, you're not seeing their genitals, you're seeing hair, face, body. And so that these
Yeah.
these guys, they're attracted to femininity. It's an attraction specifically to femininity, and yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's what they like. But yeah, 99% of them will never be out in public with trans women or feminine gay men. It's very much on the down
Yeah.
low type of thing.
Yeah, and I think this is why, I mean, I just love debunking the trans activists on this point, because you know the way they talk about Samoa and other places with these third genders, and you know, I feel like those gay men are pushed into this third role, and then they're just the perfect vessel for other men in the community to have sex before they get married. You know, if their situation is you only have sex with a woman when you're married or to have kids, those men are then perfectly positioned, and they often kind of have to be far more feminine in terms of their makeup and hair and everything like that. So it's just
Yeah.
interesting how people say, oh, but that's a third gender, they're more progressive, whereas actually in reality it's far more reductive. And that's the same with all of these ideas, I think.
Right. Yeah, that talking point drives me insane because, like with Samoa specifically, it's illegal to
I
be
saw I
gay.
saw you shared a story about this today, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Maybe you
It
made me
drives me
talk about it.
crazy. Yeah, a lot of these countries, they're like the trans activists will try to say like, how are you making such a big deal out of this? There's all these other cultures that have third genders. And I'm like, yeah, it's illegal to be gay in all of them. Like, do the math. Oh my God. And even like the Thai lady boys, they're basically used as a form of sex tourism.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
it's very creepy. It's like feminine gay boys who are, I mean, the government, everyone in Thailand knows that Gamps come to Thailand specifically to have sex because they're known for having the most beautiful trans women or lady boys. Like these other cultures are not progressive. It's not like we should be more like them. We should be more like Samoa, where it's illegal to be gay, so parents make their son this third gender as soon as they start to notice that he has feminine mannerisms. Um, Granted, I think the law is not enforced there anymore. Like, I don't think anyone has
Yeah.
gone to jail for being gay in a very long time. But when this third gender thing started to happen there, it was punishable by prison to be gay. So, like, these are not progressive cultures that we should try to be more like. And all you have to do
Yeah.
is a quick Google search of LGBT rights in Samoa to see, and like, just do the math.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so many people I know that believe all this stuff, and they just think that there is this fundamental difference between the trans woman who likes men and gay men, and you know, people like you, for example. And it's just I want them to watch this and this conversation we're having so bad, because you know, once these things click and once you realize this is all just kind of a social phenomenon in how we're labeling people and how we're causing people to suffer because of who they are, and then they have to change their body, which is the least progressive thing ever.
Yeah.
You know, we're just going back and back. I mean, before, I guess it's a lot of these men would have to just pretend they're not gay or be with women, like, you know, they were just completely out of society, and then now they've started coming out of society, and then society has said, oh wait, hang on, you know, we need to actually turn you into a woman because you're not you're not following this thing. Yeah, Pear, thank you so much. This has been absolutely amazing. I've had such a great conversation with you. Just to let you
Thank you.
know, I'll be releasing it in a couple of different videos. So yeah, where can
Okay.
people find you?
Instagram and X is the Pear Joseph. Substack is just Pear Joseph. Yeah, I'm more active on Instagram, and I'll have a few new essays coming out on Substack with a couple different publications, not my own. They might even be out by the time this video's up. So
Yeah, check it. I've read all your Substack, so I definitely recommend. And yeah, we'll stay in touch. Thank you so much.